Welcome! My name is Harvey Newman, I'm a professional animator and I like to share my passion for animation here in this channel with all of you. In the last episode we tackled posing, and that is the stuff that you normally use as your base to start your animation, to set your keys, to set your extremes. So as a natural progression to that, you have to go into in-betweens and breakdowns, and that's exactly what we're gonna cover in this episode. Hopefully get you inspired to actually do your extremes, your in-betweens a little better, and to think about it in a slightly different way. So let's do that in this episode number 26. I feel like breakdowns are perhaps the thing that makes your animation sing the most. When you look at posing, it's definitely the most important thing that you have to do in your animation. After all, those poses that you set right at the beginning are the storytelling poses. The creativity comes on how you do your in-betweens and your breakdowns. How do you go from point A to point B in the most interesting way? That is a breakdown, that is an in-between. Old school animators, they had someone helping them to do the breakdowns of the in-betweens. The idea behind this is basically that the main animator, they were setting the key poses, they were setting a lot of the breakdowns, a lot of the in-betweens, but then it got to a point that the rest was just connecting the dots. So they gave it to someone else, and this in-betweener actually filled in the slots that were missing in the rest of the animation. So that's the idea behind the in-betweener. Now, what I want you guys to actually kind of take from this is basically that from the moment that you start seeing Maya as an in-betweener, more than a tool that helps you to do everything, your animation will change and your perspective towards your animations will change. Maya is nothing more than a tool to connect the dots for you, but you need to feed Maya with enough animation information in order for that connection to be good and to help you out. So now let's look at some information in this Bible of animation that will reinforce what I just talked about right now. Let's do it. Richard Williams passed away not long ago. So when I was researching this episode and I was reading his words, things seem to actually kind of take like a deeper meaning now that he's no longer with us. And Richard was genuinely an incredibly talented man, and he made the most complex of ideas seem easy and simple, and that is the true sign of intelligence. Major props to Richard Williams, rest in peace. And I want to read to you guys a little bit of a section where he talks about in-betweens and breakdowns. So let's do that now. The purpose of the assistant is to free the animator to get through more work by handling the less important bits. But as we have seen, he or she, in this case Maya, can't be just a brainless drawing machine. In this case it can, because Maya it is. How much do we leave to the assistant? Milt Kahl's answer: I do enough to have ironclad control over the scene. Ken Harris' answer: I draw anything which is not a simple in-between. Milt again: I don't leave assistants very much. How much can I get away with leaving and still control the scene? If it's a fast action, I do every drawing. Now, finally, I wanted to read the next section after that, because I think it kind of draws a lot of attention to animation being hard work and how there's no shortcuts to animation. The long way turns out to be the shorter, because something usually goes wrong with some clever rabbit's idea for a shortcut, and it turns out to take even longer trying to fix everything when it goes wrong. I found it's quicker to just do the work, and certainly more enjoyable, because we're on a solid ground and not depending on some smart guy probability half-baked scheme. And again, if you don't want to do lots of work, what are you doing in animation? And that is a very valid question. Animation is hard as nails, and if you're doing it, it's because you're doing it for the passion, and if you're doing it for the passion, then you just need to do the work. So that is the famous Richard Williams actually telling you how it is. So just like last video, let me show you some examples and how varied these breakdowns and in-betweens can be. Let's do that next. This next piece that we're going to review, it's perhaps the most iconic and the most obvious for you to find really good breakdowns, really good in-betweens. And it's the genie from Aladdin, and it was created by Eric Goldberg, and it's just a masterpiece when it comes to animation and pushing the animation to its limits. So in this piece, the genie is basically telling Aladdin that he cannot wish for anybody to be killed or anybody to fall in love. I really like this specific bit. The decisions and the creativity behind it is so interesting. There's so many things that really shouldn't really be there unless the person behind it was really creative with pushing the animation to its absolute max. So I'm gonna play it a couple of times and then we're gonna dig deep into these breakdowns. And I'm just gonna delineate the main poses just so you guys can actually see where the action starts and ends and what would be the key poses. I'm guessing here because obviously once the animation is fleshed out, it's difficult to know what was key and what was secondary, but you can fairly guess, or more or less, where the action goes to and from. So this will be one of the main poses, and then I'm guessing that the goal is to actually kind of go to this pose where he's actually patting Aladdin and again just telling him that you have to understand, we're not talking about poses here, but check how beautiful these poses are. He breaks the joints really well by actually putting the arm this way. Here it kind of disappears, so you just see the shape. And then the arm just breaks down in a curve, and then the wrist just kind of flicks with the overlap, and then finally settling. If you actually were to do this like in a linear fashion, the arm has no necessity to actually curve in this way, and most likely you see the arm straight away here. But the fact that it does that, it's actually really, really nice. This is just a basic example. Now, there's much more interesting stuff after that movement. He goes into this, I cannot kill anybody. And this whole section here is perhaps the most interesting to me. He actually kind of cuts his head with a finger and then grabs the head, talks to Aladdin, while Aladdin feels kind of sorry for him, and then puts the head back into his neck. So let's say this here, because it's static, it's one of the main poses, so it needs to go from here. Once again, I'm doing this really loosely, to then here, where he's talking. Now notice how he actually could have just gone like this, and then the head could have just fallen to the hand and just be there. The fact that it stretches out in order to actually kind of add more elasticity and more pop to that coming out of the neck, and it kind of continues stretching out. So this is a beautiful, beautiful work here. And then on top of that, he actually rolls before it kind of finally falls on his hand. And while he's rolling, notice that the tongue, it's actually doing all kinds of stuff in order to kind of magnify the emotion once again, to kind of be proper like. And in order not to distract from the motion, because you want your eyes to look at this and nothing else, in order to not distract from it, notice how both hands kind of just stay still. Both hands kind of just, this one comes to a stop really quickly, and this hand stays still while the head is rolling. And it only really catches the head over one frame just as the head is falling, in order to give it more pop. And once again, the head is stretching so much. The tongue is like overlapping here, since he's been like rolling in midair, and then all of a sudden just falls. There's a lot of squash and stretch here as well, as the head kind of just falls in the head in order to give that weight. And then this breakdown is amazing. The fact that he actually kind of goes 1, 2, 3, 4 and then settles. That is really, really cool. And he had this curve just is pointing up and up and up and up, and it finally settles here. This is just the animator being creative, going from point A to point B in the most imaginative way possible. And the same thing here, while he actually goes from this pose to then the final pose, which is putting the head in before the settle. A lot of interesting things happen. So once again, stretch. So the chin is the stuff that actually stays put, and he's actually stretching the face into this shape that is incredibly interesting. Stretching again, so you can see the line of action just following through here. Stretch again, so your eye never really stops following where the head is going, because he could have just been like, put the head on, it's all good. But he actually kind of twists the head a couple of times before he actually kind of slumps the head down back in the neck. Just accentuates the move, and also makes him more playful, makes him look like he has done this many times before. So once again, you're following the line of action here, and this is still a breakdown. To add momentum over one frame, he just puts the head down. And to me, it kind of showcases how much fun you can have with your in-betweens, with your breakdowns, and to make sure that you actually push every single part of the animation to its absolute max. So this is what this work shows, and it's really, really well done. I hope this gives you a different overview of what a breakdown or what an in-between is and how much you can do with this stuff. And I think that's a wrap for this video. I hope you guys took something valuable from it. These videos are supposed to be a shorter format to kind of highlight some of the principles of animations. What I want to do with this, because I'm not delving in depth, what I'm doing is basically trying to shed a new light on some of the principles of animation. So that's a wrap for this video. I hope to see you guys next week here. Have a great rest of the week, and until then, stay well, stay safe. Peace.